Hello, my name is Jeremy, this is Red Means Recording, and today I'm going to do an Ableton walkthrough for what I did to the OP-1 track that I recorded recently. I wanted to get back in the swing of doing these Ableton walkthroughs for the OP-1 videos because a lot of people ask whether or not I do everything in the OP-1, and the answer is always no. I always do a whole bunch in Ableton. So this is an Ableton walkthrough. I'm going to try to do one of these for each OP-1 video I do this year. Just to get the word out there that while the OP-1 is great, I do a lot of stuff in Ableton afterwards. So my focus this year with the OP-1 videos, which I'm going to try to do once a month, are to, instead of doing full tracks in the OP-1, I'm going to try to make like little loops in them. Then I'm going to bring those loops into Ableton and make a song there and record vocals for it, because I like to do that, and I gotta do what I like to do. So if you haven't already heard this track, it's at the end of the OP-1 video. There's a link in the description at the end of this video as well, so, check that out. Let's start at the bottom with the vocals. We'll get to the sidechain and vinyl effects in a second, but the vocals are recorded with this. This is the TC Helicon Perform VE. I may have a video out on this already. If I don't, it'll be coming soon. If I'm smart, I probably already put this video out. But this is a vocal processor that I'm kind of in love with, that does all kinds of vocal effects and like vocoded harmonies on the fly. And what you hear is almost raw coming out of this, and I'm really, really stoked with how this makes my voice sound, especially for certain genres of music. So let's listen to the vocals real quick. What I did was I recorded first verse, which is here and here, and then the second like little pre-chorus section is here, and then the chorus is here with some doubled backup vocals. So let's just take a listen to those real quick.
Baby, I've been living on a tightrope, walking on the line between the failures.
So there's the main verse treatment, and all the effects you're hearing are coming out of the Perform VE. I do have an instance of Neutron on this, which is a sort of channel strip thing, and it's basic EQ, compression, and a little bit of exciter. Yeah, not a lot going on. I just wanted something to sort of gel the different takes together.
I can be the one you try to save, though. If you wanna waste your time, then let's go.
So for each section, I recorded a different type of doubling. This one's sort of like just classic doubling, where it's doubling my voice, and then this one introduces a low.
I can be the one you try to save, though.
And a high. And then for the chorus,
Tightrope. It's been a long time, maybe, since we lost the war. So why we always trying to find?
we have a low and a high, and then we have these backed up vocals, which were performed using the harmony function on that. It's almost like a vocoder where you play keys on a keyboard, and it creates chords from your voice, or melodies from your voice.
Long time, maybe, since we've lost the war. So why we always trying to find?
And I recorded two passes of those, one with normal gender and one with a higher gender, which in this case, gender is like a formant shift up. And I panned them hard left and right to get a big stereo stack.
Long time, honey, since we've seen the sun. Come on and take me out tonight.
So that's what's going on there. I have these little tiny, like,
I can be the
chops, this thing right here, a little chop that has some volume automation that leads into the thing. I just really liked that. I hear it a lot in this producer Lentra, who does stuff with Baby No Money and stuff like that. It's kind of like a new trap hip R&B thing. So we got a couple of those kicking around.
Maybe if we try, we can.
And then finally, I used some fancy warp moding on some of these things. Ableton's main selling point is the ability to warp audio to conform to a beat and just change the tempo without changing the pitch and stuff. But if you mess with it, if you mess with these warp modes here, so let's listen to Complex, which is going to leave things kind of alone. It's going to try to make it natural sounding, despite the fact that I have this transposed up an octave. Okay, so that's Complex mode. Complex Pro is going to add a little bit more to try to like bring the formants back down with still having it transposed up. But what I did is I turned it to Beats mode, and Beats looks at transients, which are like the individual slices of a sound. You can see down here that there's these little markers. Those are what Ableton thinks are transients, which are going to be like I didn't describe it great last time. Basically, transients are like highest point of volume in a thing. So if on a drum, it's going to be like the peak of the kick and the snare. So it's really good for beats, which is why it's beats mode. Normally, it's set to transient. So if you warp something, the transients, it's going to look at those transients and be like, okay, well, I'm going to make those the focus of the warp and try to preserve those transients because, you know, I'm looking at it like it's a beat. But if you start changing this to different preservation modes, then you get really cool effects. So in this case, I have this set to 32, and I get this stuttering effect because it's now chopped this up into 30-second notes and is only preserving going forward those transients. So that's kind of cool. Later on, I use the same thing to fuck with these stuff. So that's the sort of normal vocal. Here, I changed the mode to beats, transposed it up, because in order to get this weird effect, you have to transpose it up or down, and up tries to speed up the audio, so you end up getting weirder stuff. Set it to transient mode to only go forward, and then preserved the quarter note. And with that, I almost get like a Scotch snap kind of thing, like... And then I did something similar over here with 1 bar. So just experimenting with different transient modes and stuff like that to see what kind of interesting stuff I can get. And I like it. I think it's kind of cool. Glitch without glitch. Okay, so those are the vocals. The sidechain has the original beat, just the kick snare, and it's just looped throughout. Instead of using the actual kick of the beat that you hear here, I wanted to be able to have the sidechain go throughout the whole thing. So this sidechain channel is just sitting here to be called upon if I need a sidechain. And then finally we have some vinyl just being sidechained and filling in some of the holes there. So we got vinyl effects sitting down here. We got sidechain. We talked about the vocals. We got some risers. Now the OP-1 is very bad at this type of effect. And these are those classic sort of elevators that you can hear that there's some delay and stuff on. The OP-1's delay and reverb suck. They are mono for the most part. I just don't like them at all. So what I did is I do that stuff in Ableton because it's a lot easier to access the riser samples that I have and also place them. So these are those sort of classic elevators that you're going to hear in almost every EDM track. A lot of stuff is really stereo. There's a huge stereo image to this stuff. And so a lot of what I'm working with here, I have applied a fake stereo to by running it through a delay, making it 100% wet. I'm using milliseconds as opposed to notes, and I am delaying one side of it. I'm pushing the stereo image out even more because I want what's in the middle to really, really hit. I end the track with this little triangle, which is just a stock sample in Ableton that's running through Valhalla Shimmer, which is a very, very cool reverb plugin. All of that tail end is coming from Shimmer. So yeah, just a little thing. We got a very classic trap crash that is running through Valhalla Shimmer as well, because I find that Shimmer gives a really, really good tail to drum sounds if I want them to do that. Can you please not right now? Can you please not? I'm recording. No, I'm recording. Look, say hi. Okay, great. So this is cool shit. We're going to get into the drums real quick. These hats here, I'm going to turn off texture and you can hear them. So this is the actual beat. But what I found was I wanted to add some more interest to my default beat. And you've just heard it. So what I did was I used this plugin called Texture, which is a frequency-dependent, volume-dependent triggering plugin. So basically, it takes in your signal, and you can sidechain it using very specific frequencies, and sidechain it for using very specific envelope stuff, and then apply new samples to it. And in this case, this is triggering this leaves crunching sound that I've pitched up. Like, there's all kinds of different samples in here. There's tons and tons and tons. And it's just a really cool way to use what you already have to trigger new sounds. And I used it a lot in this, and I'm just a big fan in general. Fills are all, for the most part, chops from the drum track from the OP-1. You can see anywhere it says track 3, track 4, track 1, those are stuff from the OP-1. OP-1's 4 tape tracks. So fills are just little bits from that, and everything that came from the OP-1 is running through Supercharger, which is a saturation thing. So some saturation and compression, and then I adjust the character depending what kind of instrument that I'm using there. And the reason that I do this is because the OP-1's master comp or drive is really, really distinct, and I always use it when I'm recording, but it's hard to reproduce in software. Like once you get those tracks out of the OP-1, you lose that wonderful master comp tape drive thing, or whatever the hell it is, some kind of magic juice. So I always kind of run things through a saturation stage before I even start processing them. So these are all chops from the main drums, with some exceptions of some random fills from my sample collection. And I did a fair amount of little chops and volume and, excuse me, not volume, pitch automation. Give me that pitch automation. There we go. So just to get that sort of like classic sound from those types of genres that this is drawing from. All right, so let's go to our main drums. Our main drums are dry. You've heard them in the OP-1 recording. They sound like this. And what you're seeing here are multiple tracks in an audio effects rack, all sending to different instances of texture. We have our dry track. And then finally, we have something running through Valhalla Room, which is a really good reverb plugin from Valhalla. And you can see here that I've focused on basically just the clap, because I wanted to bring out a reverb in the clap, but I wanted the clap to hit with a little bit more verb, a little bit more stereo, but I needed to carve out all other frequencies. So it's kind of impossible to carve out everything I wanted to, but we're getting mostly the clap there to add some interest. Dog has a sock. Okay, so the bass is a pretty subby bass from the OP-1, and ignore this chain because I at some point thought that maybe I would do some high-end stuff to it, because the issue with sub basses is that they sort of disappear into the mix on smaller speakers. But in the end, I decided that there wasn't really any good way for me to get high frequency interest out of something that was so low to begin with. I just was introducing noise. So I have that supercharger instance, like I do with everything coming from the OP-1. This Waves plugin, CLA bass, if I'm just looking to sort of like enhance the bass in a sort of like random way, in a sort of like I don't want to think about it way, I kind of reach for this plugin quite a bit. I just drop it on and it's going to do a little bit of magic. And then you have the ability to, hey, can you stop? Then you have the ability to drill down into various settings here to shape the sound even more. And then finally, this EQ3, you can see that it's automated on and off. And that is because I wanted bass in the breakdown sections. Like where the track gets quieter. Like I don't want the bass to drop out completely because that's our foundation, but I do want to bring it down some. So actually I'm going to bring that down just a little bit more. So that when the drop hits in, or when we go back to the big beat sections, the bass is more powerful and makes the track more powerful. So you can see that I've just flipped on and off here the bass EQ to when it's on, there's less bass. When it's off, the bass is in full. So that's what's going on there. Let's see what we got here. This is just a little dry recording from the OP-1. And I dropped this in, I think, in the second half of the drop. And that was just because the second time the drop hits, the second phrase of the drop, I wanted just to add a little bit more something so that it didn't seem boring, and so that's sitting there in the background. That appears later on as well. So here is our sort of main guitar riff, the main verse guitar riff, and you can see that it's supercharger, as we talked about before. I'm using this multiband dynamics thing as basically just a 3-band shaper, and there's no compression really happening here. I just wanted to shape the highs, mids, and lows a little bit, so you can tell there's a lot more high end going on there, which is where you're getting... Here, I'll just turn it off real quick. So that's what it was before, and this is what it is now. I thought at some point I was going to use this auto filter for something, but I guess I never did, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And then finally we have Valhalla Room acting as reverb duties, which helps place it in the soundstage a little bit and gives it a little bit more reality, because otherwise everything would just be hella dry. I can barely hear that. I have this little flute that accents the first beat. Just a little tiny interest thing sitting there. When the drop hits the end of its first phrase and starts repeating, I have these little chants. These are just... Oh, let me turn off everything here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's another one over here that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same one. Okay, so supercharger. I think I just copied the vocal chain from something else, but basically...
Yeah.
Nectar is a vocal plugin that is doing a little bit of processing to it. I probably don't even need that, honestly. We've got Shimmer to give that big ass, see that high end sort of hiss verb going on there. Replica is a delay plugin that is doing the delay duties. And then instead of using the sidechain, we're using Xfer's LFO tool, which is a shapeable modulation plugin, as a sidechain. You can see that it's going through here and modulating the volume up and down. And so this is just sort of like a little bit of like attitude to the thing, because this is a very melodic sort of like down-tempo track, but I still wanted it to have a little bit of attitude with vocal samples and stuff like that. So that's what that's there for. I think there's nothing really special going on there. It's just repeating throughout. So this glitch group exists because this is like almost all the lead sounds of our track right here. And the reason that it's all grouped is because I'm using not only a little bit of EQ, but I'm using DB's Glitch 2 plugin to introduce that tape stop effect every now and then. So if we go into the automation, you'll see that this tape stop thing is turned on and off as it goes. So let's listen to this group real quick and you can hear what this is doing. So there's lots of ways to do this effect. In the past, I've gone in and, if your track warp mode is set to complex and you go into clip and transpose, and you go to your end of your phrase, you can draw in the approximation of a tape stop like that. And if you wanted to start again, you can come back. Man, I am burpy. Holy shit. Burp, burp, burp. You can come back here and go like this. And then you have sort of a tape stop. But that was a lot of work for all of these tracks, and some of them are MIDI, so I can't really manipulate them in the same way that I would audio. So I just reached for Glitch 2 to give me that tape stop effect. All right, so let's go through what's happening here. First off is this what's called the drop synth. This, we can get rid of this and this. This is those fast 16th note chords that I recorded in the OP-1. And these come in the second half of the drop just to give some interest. They're getting supercharger like everything else. They're getting that fake Interesting. I guess I forgot to turn this to time. They're getting that fake stereo thing. They're getting a phaser from the Native Instruments Phasis, which is a very good phaser. I like it. A little bit of EQ, and then some sidechain. I played with this sound quite a bit to see what I could do to make it interesting, but in the end I just decided it was cool like it is. Alright, these vocals sound like this. So let's turn off everything that's going on there except for the supercharger, which is... I recorded these near the end of the OP-1 video because I always have to have vocal chops because I'm a boring motherfucker that does everything the same all the time. When I started putting the track together, and I should mention, I sped this up quite a bit. I think the initial tempo was like 109, but as I was seeing the vocals in my head, trying to prepare for them, I just, it was too slow, so I decided to speed the whole track up. So I heard these, and I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of cool, but it's not drop-worthy. So one of the things I've noticed a lot about sort of like pop future bass or pop dubstep kind of stuff, Chainsmoker / Skrillex, stuff like that, of which this track, you know, borrows from quite a bit, is that they like to do really processed vocals. Like there's this sort of aesthetic of the drop sound that is like really nasally, almost like a flute or a what do you call it, like a saxophone or something like that. So I'm like, okay, well, how can I make this more interesting? So I reached for Vocal Synth, which is a Isotope plugin that has 5 processors that you can fuck with, and then a slew of effects down here. So with it off, it sounds like that. With it on, so I have this Biovox thing going. And then on top I have the vocoder. So it just gives the vocals kind of an otherworldly feel, which I thought was really, really cool. You can still tell they're vocals, but they're just really processed. I have some distortion and some delay going on as well with this. And then Nectar is doing some vocal processing on top. There's this little tiny chant that goes into it as well. And again, it's just this, like, let me add some, like, attitude to this. It was just a weird little choice. I decided that I was going to actually triple this lead sound. So I had this pan pipe with volume LFO. And again, that's because the pan pipe / flute sound is one of those things that is a characteristic of this type of drop, and I just thought I'd, like, lean into it. Finally, I recorded through that Perform VE thing me singing the notes for the drop as well. And that's sitting in the background. So, all stacked. So what else do we have in this section? We have... Oh yeah, this was recorded on the OP-1. I think it comes from Cuckoo's recent pack for the OPZ. But just some like 16 dotted, just some dotted eighth note chords that I played, and I'm sweetening it with the Neutron Transient Shaper to try to give it a little bit more attack and less sustain to make it sharper, multi-band dynamics, and then I'm making it a little stereo with that trick that I talked about. Thought I was going to get away with not adding any external synths to this project, but in the end I was like, fuck it, let's just do it. So I have this little arp. It's really, really simple and really dry because it just was supposed to add some background interest. And there's nothing going on here, really. It's just an arpeggiator and the stock basic shape and wavetable somewhere between a square and a saw. This wavetable instance was meant to actually be sort of like more downward chords, like this doesn't have, oh, it does. Almost like that. But I decided it was more interesting gated like that. So this LFO here is set to 16th, and it is screwing with the frequencies for the filter. These two wavetables came from Viridian's wavetable library. If you Google free Serum wavetables, you will find an exhaustive list, and I downloaded them all. And let me tell you, having the right wavetables for the right job is huge. So the LFOs, not the LFOs, the envelope 3 here, is moving through the wavetables for both of these. There's one, and there's two. So we can go over to the other wavetable real quick. When we got to this section, let me turn this off real quick. So that's kind of like the pre-chorus, and it was working for me, but it wasn't working all the way. And I felt like it needed a little bit more in it. So I duplicated that previous thing that I just played for you with the 16th note gated chords, and I changed the rate to an 8th note and brought the frequencies all the way down and assigned them to a macro. So everything else is the same here, I think. I'll change the envelope 3, but... So this gives us sort of that classic, like, almost dead mouse pluck. And it also gives me the ability to automate the filter for some interest. So now that sits in the background behind the vocals.
So why we always trying to find? It's been a long time, honey, since we've seen the sun. Come on and take me out tonight.
By the way, I'll just say, the more time I spend with Ableton's wavetable, the more I love it. I do wish it had some built-in effects, but I understand that you have access to like all of Ableton's effects to put on it. Serum's really dope because you have all the effects built in, and they are modulatable within Serum's interface, and I wish Wavetable had something like that, but the ease of use of Wavetable and the integration into Ableton is really, really cool, and the unison modes that it has, the spready modes, are fucking fantastic. This is a little preset in the OP-1 that I just added randomly because I was kind of losing track of what I was doing in the OP-1 session, and it's just sitting here in the background. During these sections, I have the time of it, and I wanted it to be gritty, so I ran it through Guitar Rig, and it's got some delay from Replica, so nothing crazy going on there. And then finally, we have... so I had all these little guitar samples that I brought into the session. That was sort of the focus. So I got these cool, sort of like, I don't know what guitar words are, but it's just like really fast, sort of ambient stuff. So that's pretty much all that's going on. That sounds like a cat. Yeah, so that's Tightrope. Hi. Come up and say hi. It's Riker, everybody. I think he wants to walk, and we're done here, so we can do a walk. That is Tightrope. Thank you for watching. If you have any more questions or comments... Oh, one more thing. I'm running it through Ozone 9. Basically just to get the volume kind of where I need it. There's some other stuff going on here, but this was just, this is a really dirty master that will get messed with later. And I use the Mastering Assistant for it. So, and then finally Tonal Balance Control 2, which is another Isotope plugin that you set a genre here, and it will show you, see these bands here. These are sort of like where you would want to hit for that genre. And you can actually bring in a reference track if you want, which is kind of cool. You can have it analyze like an album, a series of WAV files, and you can create your own graph here. So that's pretty dope. So I just use this to make sure that I am sort of in the right zone for my mix. And yeah, looks like I am. A little bit of high end, but whatever. My friends, that is, what the hell is this track called? Tightrope. Tightrope. Thank you for watching. I hope that you will join me in more Ableton walkthroughs. I hope this has been interesting to you. And yeah, feel free to leave a comment if you want to. All that stuff. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording. I hope you have a wonderful day.
I can be the one you try to save though. If you wanna waste your time, then let's go. Balancing will always take a